You ready? Well, good morning.
Morning. I would have a
That's it.
huge crowd. I know most folks, not most folks, but non-Maine folks, it's the summertime for Maine is the big vacation time, but I've noticed in Maine, a lot of folks are going during hunting season and kind of last of the camping. I know we have one counselor who's out on a trip in Baxter State Park area this week, so, and I know, so I have quite a huge crowd here, but it's Big Finance Friday. I'm going to send it over to Nate to go through things. As we've talked about before, we continue to kind of iterate here on our reporting structures, especially we're looking towards at a future Big Finance Friday to really kind of bring the department heads in at some point and kind of go through budget by budget, a little bit more on where we're at from a departmental level. But before I hand it to Nate, I got a couple updates on the calendar for Finance Fridays. We're going next week. We're going to talk about the our fleet and fleet leasing. I know that came up a lot in the budget cycle on lease options and and how that affects costs and over the long term, but also maintenance and a bunch of questions that so we're going to bring someone from Enterprise who's doing our police cruiser lease to talk about a little more on how that works in funding and how kind of buying some of our fleet and moving forward. We do have a few of our highway department vehicles that are no longer serviceable and can't be inspected, and really any kind of repairs to those would be worth less than would cost more than the worth of the vehicle. So we're probably going to be coming to council at this next meeting with a request to enter into a lease agreement with Enterprise for a few replacement trucks for the highway department. So it's a timely conversation to have the full conversation about leasing the Friday before, but we'll also, for those councilors that can't make the Friday discussion, talk about it on Monday. And then the following Friday, I think October 25th, we're going to have a presentation with Sean Willie and myself on parking kiosks and funding mechanisms, obviously a range of other issues on other cities and towns that have implemented them in Maine, and what moving to a parking kiosk system could mean, both pros and cons, to see if folks think that's a good idea, and if we want to be looking towards a more formal proposal for a future council meeting. So those are the two next big Finance Friday meetings where we'll, in addition to talking about the warrant and the general finances, but a little more high-level policy type things that can affect city finances as well. So that's it for my updates. I'll send it over to Nate.
Off to me. All right, so if you have in front of you, I printed out the budget versus the actual. This is through September 30th, 2024. So this was for the first 3 months of the fiscal year. Just to clarify, the first column is the actuals from last fiscal year. The second column is where we're at currently, July through September this fiscal year. And then obviously our year-to-date budget, what our budgeted numbers were, and then the difference between the budget versus the actual. So the first column, like I said, is just looking at last year, so you can see what we had last year. Ashley and I have gone through the books, trying to get ready for reconciliations. So I feel like this is, I'm not going to say 100% accurate, but I feel like it's 99% accurate. And we keep going through and making little changes, adjustments to accounts if we see something that's in the incorrect account, but that doesn't mean that we caught everything. The highlighted columns are your revenues, and your expenses are just not highlighted, so they're black and white. On the big screen is showing your real time as of now. As you can see, it says 10/24, so this is current actual, so they're not going to reflect the exact same amount as what's on the paper copies. But just so you can see where we're trending, obviously your greens are your good. We're projecting towards budget. Yellows mean we just have to keep an eye out. Obviously, reds mean that we've reached budget or over budget. So some of those things, like harbor, you see it in the red, and wastewater. But those are things that the income has not come into, that's why it's shown a large red, because the total income for the year has not accounted for that. But like I said, Ashley and I have worked trying to figure out, make sure we have accurate numbers, and make sure when we do the reconciliations that we are 100% accurate. We've worked with RHR, get the auditing adjustments that we needed for this past fiscal year, so we're ready for the audit. And, I think we're making good strides.
So I have a question. I thought we had talked about this last time too. Like you were gonna rename the interest and then revenues, interest, dividends. We were trying to figure out, was that tax interest? And then one was bank interest. So we were gonna try to like rename the label of it so that it's better, people have a better understanding of
Yeah.
the financial statements.
Absolutely. Can you make that note? I don't have a pen. But that's just joking.
I stole his pen.
I led my pen,
Thank you.
but we'll make that change for sure.
Yeah, and I think we had talked last month too about, we wanna see what the percentage of accounts receivable is for the taxes that have been collected.
Yeah, I spoke with, and
Yeah,
we'll definitely
yeah.
make sure that's
So,
on record. And this obviously will be published online. I might be able to get that on there, so
Yeah.
it's recorded online also.
yeah, that would be good, so, both personal property and, like,
Yeah.
the total commitment
Yeah.
to what the AR is,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd like to just go on the record as to say how far this has come in a year. Last year at this time, we had no clue where we were, how we were, or who we were.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at some real numbers, which drives a lot of questions to you. And I don't mean to badger you with questions, but we didn't have this last year.
Yeah.
This is just fabulous.
With content comes questions, I understand.
Yeah.
And I feel like every month, after I was talking to the gentleman, I think each month, hopefully it'll get progressively better on what you see and what you're looking for. I'm trying to do my best to
Well, it's-
show what's out there, so you guys obviously can make sound decisions.
My question is this, the pilot program?
Mm-hmm.
You've got 30,000 a year in the budget,
Mhm.
and you've got 12,000 for the first quarter of last year and 12,000 for the first quarter of this year. Who does that come from? It must come from one individual if it's clean and simple at 12.
I know one is Jackson Lab, I believe. But we do have one other organization, I believe, that will be contributed. I believe they said it would be in October. I don't know who that is, so.
Okay, so this budget here is for Jackson Lab only, 30 grand?
No, not just Jackson Lab.
Okay.
Like I said, I think it's two entities.
Could I ask who contributes?
I wanted to just add, I don't think that's Jackson, or it's in the wrong place, because voluntary contributions is where Jackson Lab would go.
Oh, okay.
And then, the pilot, I believe, is community, no, it's,
So voluntary
Main Community
contributions is nothing
yeah.
thus far.
What'd you say? Who?
The main community fund.
I'll say, because I didn't.
Can you see who, can you see in your receipts who that is?
Yeah, probably.
Doesn't have to happen now. My point is this, there's a great potential for growth in that area, whether it's voluntary contributions or pilot.
So, the only reason we had to rename it was because Jax wanted to show that it was voluntary contribution.
That's
for-
fine.
So, and then pilot was definitely payments in lieu of taxes.
Yeah,
so-
people have an issue, it's the same thing in Castine, like Maine Maritime Academy does not call it a pilot. They
Yeah.
don't want to call it a pilot.
So you literally have to split it out.
You can call it anything you want, but there's room for growth. All these nonprofits that are asking for services, I think we could ask for some sort of contribution. I think.
Unfortunately, I can't see it on here because it's a Trio import, but I can get the name.
I'd just love
Yeah.
to know, because whether it's contributions or whether it's the pilot program, either one is slacking up on Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth contribution. And that's where I'm going with that.
You know, yeah, I think, I remember from a previous budget meeting, I'm sure it's in my checklist, but I just double put it in there on just requests for pilots, I think you'd mentioned. You know, we can pull
I
that
don't care
list.
what you call it.
Or, yeah,
anything.
request for voluntary contributions is what we maybe say, and, you know, outline the taxes that they would have paid if they weren't, and all the services, and.
I think that would be great to see in the budget, to see what their taxes would have been if they had been taxed, and showing that they're getting that benefit already.
Can you make that? Can you
Absolutely,
make that
so,
note?
And maybe they
I just don't wanna
can
forget to.
contribute a voluntary contribution, or maybe we can say contribute
Just
to a
the ones that
program like
contribute to
beautification, or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we can talk further about it, but yeah, having a mailer that goes out before budget cycle, maybe during
Oh,
the.
yeah.
Just kind, and also just knowing that universe a little
No.
better.
Yeah, my thing is, anything that you could slack up on with Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth, and if, whoever it may be, and maybe it's not the same for everybody, maybe the percentage is different for everybody, but I like your idea of having, what would your taxes have been? What is it you're asking of the city? What are you willing to contribute to take a little burden off Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth?
And maybe just like a top line figure so folks know too, just
Yeah,
if all
yeah.
nonprofits in the
There's
city
room
were
for
taxed,
potential here, I
this is
believe.
how much additional revenue would be. They're doing that in Castine, they're talking about, and it's the much smaller, but they're, you know, MMA is the only one that, but there is a fair amount of nonprofits in Castine too, and they're doing a request. And,
you can send out a letter. I did it years ago, so it's probably in my
Okay.
file somewhere that, even maybe the list, you can get a new list, obviously, because there's more, but asking them to, you know, what we provide to them, and just send it out and be like, hey, we're looking for some payment of taxes.
yeah.
So,
I do want a couple things. One, after talking with Charlie, you know, our goal is to meet with each department here in the next couple of weeks, just to kind of sit down with their individual or the department finances and kind of just make sure, does everything look right on your end? Are we missing anything? Is there anything we can do better? Basically, kind of just, let's evaluate before it gets too late in the year. So we're definitely gonna do that. I also took a look just to see where we were at last year at the end of September, our cash balance compared to where we're at this year at the end of September, cash balance. It was kind of hard because this year we pulled the TAN, but now last year we also had a large general obligation bond came in. So that kind of skewed the cash balances a little bit, but we're about $200,000 more than we were last year at this time. Just to give you an idea of where we're at. I know I don't have it written down anywhere, but I wanted to pull those numbers just to see. And we ended the year just under 2 million. So I don't know the cash flows as well because I haven't been a whole fiscal year, but just so you can see where we're at and where we're trending.
Yeah, and I'd also say, you know, we met with Bucksport Town Manager Sue Lassard, who's been sort of a guiding light for us on, you know, she's an expert in finances, and it was really interesting to talk to her about, and I'm sure you know this too, Tammy, is like municipal budgeting is like so predictable. Like once you just know in October you're gonna get hit with any, you know, outstanding kind of bond payments you have to make. You know, that's gonna be a really big expense. This is a good example. I think this is an $870,000 warrant. You know, it's not, that wasn't an expenses piece, it's because a lot of big ticket payments come in this time of year. You kind of know where your ebbs and flows are at, and, you know, excited for Nate and Ashley, especially because last year they didn't really have actuals because they broke the system when they went into a technology transfer and all those other things. But as this team gets a full year under their belt within this technology software, we built the budget in the software, we're tracking in the software, you know, we'll especially next year, we're really going to be a lot tighter on the year-to-date budgeted actuals and, you know, and be able to kind of put revenues and expenses in the timelines and the longitudinal data there against each other. So looking forward to that.
Are we finished with Munis? Because I feel like it was around this time last year that we had to extend our maintenance contract for another year.
So we're not, we still need it for the you know, the reconcile, and that's kind of the last, I should also note on the reconcile, the team's doing awesome. we're pretty much, seems like there.
Yeah.
It's, except for that bridge.
Yeah.
The Munis to Cassell transfer and how you kind of build those overs so that all the rest of those dominoes can fall. But we previously budgeted this, in this cycle, to hold Munis for the year. And, yeah, I think the previous year, they were hoping they weren't gonna have to use Munis, so it was an unbudgeted expense, but Munis,
But we did budget it this year.
We did budget it this
Okay.
year, I just-
Hopefully this is, we said that last year too, so.
yep, so this is a budgeted to have Munis. I think we tried to get it to like a read-only access as opposed to the full access, to bring down the cost a bit, but the previous plan is to hold Munis for the year. You know, really just to, help finish up the reconcile, and then we'll fully transfer over and not have it in the budget next year.
Have we paid our other bonds, the, like, two? I lost my mind. So I see the, US Bank, those are bond bank, and then we should have had, like, I don't remember.
We have another
I can't
one coming,
remember.
I think the 2015 bond is due November 1st, I want to say.
Okay,
Because I just got the invoice, I think it was yesterday, in my email. So
okay.
they're coming, but
Do you wire them, or?
wire,
Yeah, I would wire them, 'cause you can do it right that same day.
yeah, exactly.
Interest. And the bank doesn't charge us for wires?
Mm-mm. That's what we like to do.
We also have, I just signed the paperwork for, I think it's a $970,000 DEP reimbursement, so.
Holy smokes.
Yep.
Been on for a while, huh?
Yep, so that'll close out that piece, and that was on one of the water or wastewater upgrades. So that'll hopefully make us a little more flush. And the Red Bridge Road, a lot of those payments have
Yes.
now gone out, so we're getting to closing the decks on that and really, having a lot more predictability in what's outstanding. I know that was, especially coming in, that was a worry for me of what are the bills, what are the reimbursements? But I think we're getting a lot more on top of that with the reconcile.
I don't know if you can see it on the screen up there, but that shows the taxes receivable as of, like I said, right now, 13.4 million,
What is it, 13?
405,275.69. I put it right here on the watch list so you can see that at any time. Any other questions regarding the budget, actual numbers? Gentlemen in the crowd, any comments, concerns? You can rake me through the coals later.
At what point do we have a conversation about some accounting for the free services that the wastewater department is providing to all the buildings in town? That's my question, because,
What do you mean by free services?
well, my understanding is that all of the city buildings do not
Oh.
get billed for their sewer, but they do get billed for their water. And I realize that one is PUC regulated and one is not, but while we're in the business of cleaning up some financial housekeeping here, I would think that there should be a conversation, even if it's a journal entry or the savings or something, that
Yep.
that the school department received this much value
Yeah.
that would have been billed. Or, I've never seen a municipal bill, but my understanding is it looks far different than the bill that Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth gets. Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth gets the water and the sewer, and they're charged for the same usage. Whatever they charge for water is what we assume goes to sewer. And my understanding about the municipal buildings is that water is showing the revenue for it, but all of the city buildings are dumping the sewer with no accountability for cost.
Yep.
And I realize that there could be an argument, well, geez, we don't want the school department, we don't want the Brian E. Moore School to have to do that, we don't want this, we don't want that. Well, that's fine, but if we're gonna allow that, there should be a value here somewhere that we could realize. And I realize this is a cash flow, this is a real number, but when you look down through here, it's, there is a value that this department is doing that we're not seeing.
Yeah, and I think, now I know what you're talking about, and definitely something, I've been thinking about linking that to the depreciation issue in the wastewater, that really was the main driver behind the bond rating decrease. And I probably get the actual details of this wrong right now, but my memory was that when they did the wastewater upgrades, like some of the bonding, other pieces kind of were carried by the city, which is, in excess of the ratepayer kind of categories, and that there is a large depreciation that essentially, because of that, that the wastewater is holding, which it's kind of an accounting piece, but I've been thinking about, to your point, Steve, like how could we quantify, maybe a credit from the last X years that the city has been doing this for, what that would be, and then holding that credit moving forward, so we actually know what those bills are until that's cleared, and then at some point, maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's 15 years to clear that credit, then the city actually does start paying its water as an actual bill to account for.
Well, it's paying the water now.
Yeah, it is paying the water.
It's just not-
Oh, sorry,
the
the sewer,
wastewater.
yeah.
So- And you can get all that information, you just have to pull the water, because we are paying it, and that's the numbers that it's based on.
And the sewer is the same thing.
Then, so yeah, you would just multiply it, and the good thing is the sewer is just a flat rate where it's tiered with the water department, so based on usage. So it should be easy to figure out and to put in the budget, however, that's gonna drive taxation up.
Yeah, so I would.
So that was kind of the issue on,
But in the near
Well-
term, if you're trying to clear the depreciation, you could say, okay, that wastewater plant was built in X. The city should have been paying this much wastewater over the last 10 years. That's $1.7 million. And then you make that that's how you clear the depreciation as the debt. And now you have to pay that for, so the city gets a credit for that. And then, whether it's 2035 or, once that credit clears, the city actually does start paying what it's already paying, but it's kind of hidden in the ratepayer fees now.
My simple point is this, it's fuzzy math, and fuzzy math is dangerous. And when I looked at the financials, when I first got elected, the wastewater was a mess. Still is.
Yep.
Because we're not reporting the true value. That's my thing. I didn't know for 2 years that the city, all of the city's buildings weren't paying their share of sewer. And fuzzy math is dangerous, always dangerous.
Yeah,
My
that's-
preference would be make every city department pay a water and sewer bill. But obviously, other councils didn't feel that to be the right
Several
thing.
years ago, we did. And the city started paying the water bill, and the city started paying the sewer bill. If they dropped paying the sewer bill, then
That's-
something has slipped by. But we did this, I know it's been 8 to 10 years. Gary Fortier was the one that brought it up. And when we did it because of their enterprise accounts, and it in effect, by the city not paying the sewer bill, puts the cost on the backs of the users, and while the city is getting a free ride.
Yep.
so I don't remember that at all, Mark, and, because I was the one who brought it up too, because we're, for the same reason, we're trying to, drop that depreciation down, and we needed to collect, but I don't ever think it came to fruition.
Yeah, if you went back in minutes and.
I think it might have been discussed at a finance committee meeting.
Maybe 10 years ago. It wasn't long after I got on the council. And we changed the rules then.
Good paperwork makes good friends, and fuzzy math is dangerous.
Yeah, and I think I put a little bit of a pause on this one just while we do the reconcile, though Leia's now with us full-time. This might be a good side project if we can, especially going into next budget season. It seems like the natural place to, you know, we're kind of in this now for what we budgeted, but figuring out, you know, as we get into next budget season, the, both what this would be, just if we wanted to go to true accounting on the water, what that impact would be, but then also the bond, and the depreciation and those pieces, and can those be married together? And, you know, it's gonna be a significant project that is.
I'm in favor of, I'm not saying it has to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that, you know, since I've been here, that was only disclosed to me a year ago, okay? And I've been whining about that budget for a long time. And so it's a great place to talk about it is the finance, and maybe it's next year at budget time. I'm fine with that. Just that improvement could help everybody, I believe.
Yeah, and I think the fuzzy math is important, right? It's, because we're paying the cost. And I think we did a fair amount of that this last budget cycle as we were uncovering things like a lack of, you know, budgeting for the taxes on overtime. And we didn't want to add $100,000 to the budget, but that money has been coming out, it just wasn't budgeted for previously. So you have to do it. And I think to your point, Tim, you were saying when you brought it up previously, it's kind of like, hey, you know, sometimes it can be easier to, you know, well, I don't want to increase by 0.2 mils to kind of pay for this, but that's still getting paid by the ratepayer. And it's still being carried in depreciation and a bond, you know, decrease. So, you know, we gotta, even if it might be hard to stomach, you know, we just gotta do better true accounting, so.
Good paperwork makes good friends.
Yeah.
I think I have those in my files too, because when I did bring it, I had like, you know, like a 3-year average for each of the buildings, so that should be in my information as well.
I may be singing a different tune if it's 2 mils.
No,
But-
it wasn't anything,
Okay.
I bet you it was, I feel like it was 300,000 to 400,000 maybe.
Per year.
I mean,
That's-
I'm digging deep for this, but.
Especially with the school, yeah.
Yeah, with the school,
Whatever it is, it's real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sewer is not free.
No. No water and sewer. We were excited to get that Northern Borders
Got jokes
$1 million
down there.
grant.
I do.
Doing the paperwork on that now.
Say it again?
The Northern Borders $1 million grant for our water station upgrades, so.
You know me so well.
Finishing the paperwork on that.
That's all I got.
excellent.
Thanks, Al.
Anybody from the public?
I have one thing, I have nothing to do with finances. What's happened to the flag up at the corner? It's gone.
The corner at,
SK Waiting?
SK Waiting?
Main and High. Up in.
SK Waiting, right?
SK
I
Waiting.
don't know, that's a good question.
I can check it out.
And while you're checking on it, please, I'll be polite. The last time that the flagpole was repaired, when the rope broke, it was changed to an external halyard. That is an internal halyard pole. And a 3x5 flag was put on it. It's a 40-foot pole. A 40-foot pole calls for nothing less than a 8x12 flag.
Very much agreement here.
Can we please restore that pole to what it's supposed to be? When you have an external halyard, the weather gets to the rope and does a number on it.
Yep.
I still have a key to it, to the pole itself. And it has to be fixed correctly. It was my brothers and I that bought and installed that pole for the city. So, yeah, I'm kind of biased about it.
No, and a pole that size with that size flag is not appropriate. So I'll
Correct.
definitely look into that.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Yep. Great.